This is Deborah Rue, and you're listening to Human Potential at Work. Today, I have Paul Smyth, that is the Accessibility Director of Barclays Bank, and he's joining us from the United Kingdom. So, Paul, welcome to the program.
Hi, Deborah. Pleasure to be here.
So, Paul, I don't really know if that's your exact title. Tell us your title and a little bit more about what you do with Barclays.
Sure, thanks. My title is the Head of IT Accessibility at Barclays. And what that means is I lead our digital accessibility agenda and efforts, making sure that we identify, anticipate, address the technological barriers faced by our disabled and older customers or colleagues in using our stuff. I should explain Barclays, so we're one of the major UK banks. We have a transatlantic presence, so in the UK and US predominantly, in terms of a consumer, corporate and investment bank. And we operate in over 40 countries. So, it's quite a large-scale bank. And you can imagine that across all banks, as there's been a shift to digital, when we think about digital accessibility, making sure that our technologies work for everyone, as online and mobile banking has suddenly become more important than going into your local bank branch or telephone banking, then suddenly, this role has got incredibly important within the world of financial services.
And I know that I'm in the United States and I have a Barclays credit card. So I'm a Barclays customer, very proud. And if you had banks here, I would actually be a Barclays Bank customer too. So y'all come on over to the U.S. anytime.
Oh, it's good to know, yeah.
So our listeners always like to know a little bit more about who our guests are. So Paul, tell us a little bit more about you. I know that you're married and you have children and you have a good sense of humor and you're an expert in this space, but tell us more about who is Paul?
Sure, yeah. So I guess, where to start? So I've worked for Barclays for the past 14 years or so. My first decade was spent in finance or risk or treasury. So I'm a numbery person, a chartered accountant or interest rate risk hedger by trade. I'm also severely sight impaired myself. So I have an eye condition, Stargardt's macular dystrophy. So I have no central vision, which means from about a metre or so away, it's a struggle to recognise people. Paperwork's a bit useless on me, and therefore I'm heavily reliant on assistive technologies, software to magnify or speak things out aloud, like Zoom text and voiceover, for example, which really got me excited and interested in the whole world of accessibility and really the switch in terms of my current role, what I do over the last 4 or 5 years. I guess sort of stepping back though, you're right, I'm married with kids. It's quite interesting. My kids, how they're very good at being my eyes and my helpers and describing the world around them, when you go into the park or when we're shopping with mummy and where is mummy in the busy, supermarket or shopping mall, which is kind of interesting in itself, right, as someone with an impairment and how, that may impact not just you having better skills and senses, but actually your kind of children too, which I'm always kind of chuffed with. When I think about rolling back before, the world of work, I had fine sight as a kid, and really my eyesight gradually got worse as a teenager whilst I was doing my studies at school. And I kind of think as my sight worsened, so too did my confidence. It was a real struggle using powerful magnifying glasses to read textbooks, back then, or binoculars to see the blackboard, and everything. It was sort of doubly hard to do the same things as my sighted classmates, and it was tough, right? I'm not going to lie. So I think back then, luckily though, through family, friends, a great peer support network, and actually through sport. In my case, I do lots of martial arts. I used to train with a Paralympic judo team, and I'm a black belt in a couple of different styles of Choi Karate and Choi Kwon-Do. So I think for me, the can-do attitude, if you like, and the confidence, getting comfortable in my own skin as someone with an impairment was very much kind of came from sports, which I think we should never kind of underestimate, if you like, the positive power of sport in society. I did a business degree in the UK in a place called Warwick, and really I left university deciding whether to go into banking or telecoms, or funnily enough, working for some government organisations. But I decided to choose banking, and like I say, decade mucking about as an accountant who just so happened to coincidentally use lots of assistive technologies, and helping set up our disability staff network within my bank. We call it our Reach staff network, to help inform, support, educate the business on disability and wellness matters. And I think that was so much fun and so interesting that ended up creating a role and a team and an agenda for myself in terms of digital accessibility, in terms of what I do now, right? So does that kind of give you a whistle-stop tour of the Paul plotted life story?
Absolutely, and it makes me think twice about reaching up behind you and you scaring you or something, because you might, do a flip. And I think it's cool that you're a black belt. So I think that's very interesting.
Yes,
and, I have known about Barclays' efforts for years. And I started hearing about the efforts that Barclays was making over in the United States, years ago. And I want every business, every brand to care about full inclusion of everyone, including people with disabilities and people that are aging and acquiring disabilities. But I thought, why does Barclays care? Now, in the United States, you better care or we're going to sue you. You're going to get in trouble. But you don't have, of course you do have laws and legislations and things like that, but Barclays has done more. They've done more than any other bank that I've seen. And I'm often asked which brands are really setting the bar high. And Barclays is always the first one that I mention. And I see Barclays in conversations that I never see others in. And why? Tell us why, beyond the obvious that it's really good for business. But why does Barclays think this is good for business?
Sure. Well, maybe if I sort of explain what I think and how we talk of or frame accessibility at Barclays, and maybe give you a kind of couple of milestones on the way over recent years. So I guess accessibility for me at Barclays is about making sure that everyone can use our products and services or be employed by us, regardless of their ability, situation or circumstance. And when I reflect to date, the kind of history, I think there's a negative stigma around accessibility being about this bureaucratic, burdensome checklist, with sort of minimal value adding, and people talk about disability discrimination. And I think that compliance mentality, we see it more in different places. And I know, Deborah, we've talked around, the US and law's great for making change, but sometimes not necessarily driving the right behaviours. Certainly in Barclays, as our thinking and our agenda has matured, we come to recognise that accessibility, sure, it's both a legal obligation, but it's also a huge opportunity too, right, about making things easier for everyone and making things possible for some people who couldn't do things before, who couldn't do things in the digital world. And I think when you frame accessibility like that, about creating a great experience for a greater number of people, about making sure that you're not leaving behind anyone in terms of the digital revolution and hopping on the digital bus, accessible design becomes so critical. So there's a couple of things in there about seeing accessibility less legal stick and more commercial carrot, and seeing accessibility is not just about people with disabilities. Don't get me wrong, hugely fundamental, 1 billion globally, of course they are, not so much a tiny minority, but it's about recognising that when you design for difference, you make lives easier for everyone else. And I think that mantra has kind of really sort of shone through and been our North Star. Well, when I think about some of the milestones on the Barclays journey, so 4 or 5 years back when I started out heading up digital accessibility, we were the first UK bank to launch talking cash machines, so to help customers with low or no sight or learning difficulties, dyslexia, access and get cash out independently. It seems trivial for many people, but that's a huge game changer to create independence for many of our customers. And I think we saw that that was great for the right thing to do, the moral argument, but it was also great seeing those customers with access needs voting to voting with their feet and coming to Barclays because ultimately we were more welcoming, accommodating. Ultimately, we cared compared to the bank down the high street. And I think that was the first time that we really saw that actually accessibility is great for business. Roll forward, we have a great group exec sponsor, and we've done a number of sessions with many of our leadership teams, really getting them out and meeting customers with disabilities to hear direct from a horse's mouth, so to speak. What are the general challenges that folks face in everyday life and the specific issues they face in using our bank? And again, that's winning hearts and minds, thinking about the person, at the end of the service, and the service that they're getting, at kind of best frustrated and at worst sometimes excluded or digitally excluded. I think that really helps drive that snowball effect of senior managers really getting to grips and understanding the importance of this, not driven by a legal stick, the legal you have to, but the morally and the commercially we want to. And, that's really where I think the thrust of our accessibility agenda has been born from.
Well, in the first place, in my latest book, Tapping into Hidden Human Capital, Barclays is one of the best practices that I talk about in the book. And there's so many things, I'm such a big fan of Barclays, but which is, of course, why I invited you on the program. But one thing there's so many things I like about what you're doing as a brand. But one thing that I love is that Barclays is in conversations that there's nobody else in the conversation. They're very active on Access Chat every single week. Your social media team is out there, and not just from the Barclays Access, which is their handle, chat, but also you have individuals from the team joining the chat and having the say. And the Access Chat happens at 8:00 at night in England, in the UK. And so these people are doing this after hours. Now in the United States, it's happening at 3 p.m. on the East Coast. But I can tell there's such commitment by the individuals on the team, and you do a lot of training, and you do. I was on a tweet chat the other day, and that was not Access Chat, and somebody at Barclays was paying attention, and all of a sudden they jumped in the chat and started saying, "Oh, we have these really great videos that we've created, and we've created these documents, and would you like us to send the URL?" So the thing that fascinates me about Barclays is that you are really making it part of your brand. You are taking the time to market your efforts. You're taking the time to help other corporations do this. But I love it. But tell us why. Why, Paul? Why it seems to be embedded in everything that Barclays is doing. And I want to bottle what Barclays has done and put it all over the world. And so I love that you're such a great best practice. So tell us more about it.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of things going on there. I guess one is, we have accessibility and diversity teams straddled across the organisation. We bring in senior leaders and heads of different areas, whether it's, properties, HR and hiring, sourcing and so forth, to really own the agenda rather than, a dedicated team solely responsible for it. And I think that is really important. I guess the second thing too, it comes back to the start that we offer lots of accessible customer services that nobody else does. So talking cash machines being, a first here in the UK. We've done recently around virtual sign language interpreter services. A deaf customer can come into branch, and using an iPad, we can connect to a sign language interpreter to, communicate and do your banking business. Contactless, on debit cards, making it easy for people with cognitive challenges, having to remember and recite PINs and passcodes. Mid last year, we launched voice biometrics, which again, you can use telephone banking, and we store your voice print, and it makes it possible for people with short-term memory problems and dyslexia, but it makes lives easier for everyone. And I think that relentless focus on accessibility as an innovation, as a competitive advantage, what we do compared to competitors, is something we're really proud of, and we want to talk about, because it's good for business, it's good for society, it's doing good and doing well at the same time. And it's great that we see certainly here in the UK and Europe, lots of other banks now and telecom providers paying attention and waking up and wanting to do more in this space. So it's really, gaining momentum and sort of raising the bar for everyone. And I think that's great that it's, that the law is still catching up. There's changes going on, in the US and European Accessibility Act. But actually, I think what we've kind of demonstrated is going above the minimum legal bar, has huge benefits to your brand, to, a greater reach. When you think about banking in particular, many of your most profitable customers, in a sense, are your older customers who have very heavy cash and savings and are useful from a risk perspective to balance your books with other people with, credit cards and mortgages and whatnot. And we know that age and access needs or disability are highly correlated. So, why wouldn't you pay attention to certain segments of your customer base and to make sure that your services, worked for everyone? So, it's key to our brand. It's not just about the stuff you do, but also how you promote it too. And I think, in the UK, so we have a huge digital inclusion agenda. So our digital eagles, so these are 30,000 members of staff, frontline facing, who are upskilled and digitally savvy and, keen to spend the time on our customers on the high street and the communities that we serve and that we work within, making sure that everyone has got the right IT skills and know-how to take part, in this sort of digital revolution. So again, it's making sure that we also look at, it's not just about having lots of shiny, accessible digital, online banking websites, but making sure that our customers and society at large are digitally upskilled and equipped to take advantage of that, right?
Tell me, have you been surprised when you created things like the talking cash machines, also talking ATMs, if people don't recognize the talking cash machines, or the voice biometrics or others? Have you found that customers that didn't have disabilities or that they started using these? And I'll give you an example. I know that when the iPhone was created and they had voiceover, they were surprised when all these young people started using voiceover that they weren't visually impaired or blind, but they thought this was a really, really helpful service that was provided. So have you found that your customers have started using these things that are created for one segment of your population, but really benefit everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the talking ATMs is a good example that, we narrowly view this as this will help people with sight difficulties and possibly dyslexia too, both hearing and seeing words on the screen. But of course, you find all sorts of things that people with literacy challenges or English isn't their first language suddenly take advantage of it, and it helps them as a communication aid too. So, I'm always wowed by some of the use cases and where we have got inclusive services, how they're of benefit for other people in different ways from what we originally intended. It's interesting, even ATMs now, there's certainly a large amount of work going on to look at, if you like, the kiosk accessibility. Many ATM manufacturers take so long in terms of product design to update them, but they're not as accessible as they could be or should be. And, we publicly stated and launching this month a means that you can use our mobile banking app on an Android phone to say, this is Paul, I want £40, here's my PIN, and to tap it, against the cash machine, which we think will great. You can fully access our mobile app. It's fully accessible for folks with many different impairments, and it completely sidesteps the inaccessibility of the ATM. So, that's great. But of course, by being able to do your ATM requests on your phone, it reduces queue times too, right? And for people who might be worried about, security and people shoulder surfing, it has all these other benefits to accessibility from, what you sometimes think about. So, constantly learning about how people are using things in often different and, unintended ways.
And I think that's one exciting thing that Barclays does is you're actually listening to your customers. You're asking for your customers' feedback. As you're creating innovations, you are listening to how are your customers using this and who else is using it, and you're learning from that. And so that is just that's the way corporations should work. And so I've always admired those efforts because unfortunately I do not see in my travels enough of that happening. I want to see 1,000 companies that are as good as Barclays. But right now, unfortunately, you are, in my mind, that you're when somebody asks me who are the best, you're always the very top one that I mention. And I mean, there's other great companies. Microsoft's doing good stuff. AT&T's going. I can talk about a lot of good brands, but Barclays is at the top. And it's interesting. We do not have a paid relationship. I've never done business. I'm your customer, but you've never done business with me. So you're not paying me to say these things. I'm saying these things. Yeah, it was
great free promotion, Deborah. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, because you're showing what we can do. And another thing that I like about what Barclays is doing is you seem to be aware of the social impact and your corporate social responsibility to your local communities, your national, your multinationals. And I think that is the key to everything. I think often in the United States, for example, we're having these compliance conversations instead of having the innovation conversations.
Sure.
How will this improve the customer experience for everyone? How will, right now, in a lot of countries, corporations are very suspect. You're the big bad corporation. Are you the big bad bank that brought us all down? And I think sometimes certain people want to make big corporations bad. And I think it's so important for when corporations that are really making the efforts to include all of us in employment, in your services, in your products, in your apps, that you talk about these successes and the social impact and the corporate social responsibility that goes with those conversations. I think those are critical, and Barclays is just really doing a great job with that and walking the walk. They're actually really, truly employing people with different types of disabilities that are qualified for the jobs, number one. There's nothing wrong with expecting your employees to be qualified and giving them promotions and retaining them and understanding how do you provide adaptions and accommodations to the employees. I really want to brag about Barclays so that other banks and other corporations say, I wish Deborah would brag about us, and I would love to brag about others.
Well, thanks very much. And there's a couple of things, you say there about really actively listening to, not just your average customer, but, your most demanding customers. And we do that, reactively. We're very active on social media on Twitter at Barclays Access, and very encouraging about, we want to listen, learn and act on your feedback, right? And having that, that willingness and accommodating mentality. We take and do many structured surveys asking a few hundred of our predominantly, disabled and old customers, what do you think? What banking channels do you use? What would you suggest we kind of improve on? And, I think that's really important to get closer to, the coalface and your customers' world. I think it's also important, too, to think about, we are a bank, but we have a huge technology team and technology function. And part of this is just about empathy, right? We have lots of young, digitally savvy people working across the bank, many different countries. And often, there is a distance or a disconnect between what they design and build and where our customers sit and the diversity of our customers using their stuff. So I think much of what we do internally is about just trying to close that gap and building that empathy and understanding. I'll give you an example that we do a whole stack of diverse user testing on lots of our websites. We did one a few weeks back on one of our main online banking sites, and a couple of older consumers, or seniors, I guess you would call it, that side of the pond, were sort of pointing out that the home page of a landing page had one of those little house or home icons. You sort of see it on iTunes, right? And for a young digitally savvy person, that makes sense. That's intuitive. But For someone who hasn't come across that, that's not, it does not make sense. It's not what they expect. But you kind of only gain those insights by, asking people and thinking about asking a diverse bunch of people, to make something that really works for everyone. So I think we, really home in on how do we close that gap? How do we build empathy across typically the younger, digitally savvy folks building stuff? And that's just kind of a case in point that springs to mind that's sort of so important. Listening is one thing, but sharing is another. And what I love about accessibility, I come from a very financy corporate world, in many ways sort of secret squirrel, but within the accessibility community, there is a lot more openness and collaboration. So a lot of the work we've done surveys within small and medium enterprises or small businesses to say, well, what are your attitudes on accessibility, on disability awareness, what customer services you do, the diversity of people you employ, and all that research is published there, as well as some of the case studies around, our learns from, be that talking cash machines or high visibility debit cards or whatever else. So it's really aimed as being a place giving information and inspiration, about us and others of what they've done to try and, really whet the appetite and sort of kickstart other organisations to do more in this space. And that's something I'm really proud about, that there is that open sourcing attitude and collaboration from us and from many other organisations. In the UK, we're heavily involved with the Business Disability Forum, and internationally with I'm going to spout acronyms at you now, but the IAAP, the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. So us, Microsoft, IBM, and others that again, starting to do lots of interesting research that kind of really clarifies why this is important. You think about aging demographics and so forth. But, sharing that with others, open sourcing that. I know one of the things that many companies sort of say that they find useful is our diverse personas. Many designers think about, personas and getting to grips with who it is they're building for. And we've created, as an outcome of doing lots of disabled user testing, personas based on impairment type and thinking about, with someone with dyslexia, what are the sorts of assistive technologies of different ways they might be using, their devices, and what are the hints and tips for people creating digital channels and content to think about. Hugely powerful, a bit stunned that nothing existed out there already. So, we've created, and again, we've published the video on how we reframe accessibility about this opportunity and going beyond disability on YouTube, which I'm sure we can sort of share the link to too.
Yes, that would be great. Yeah, I heard about that yesterday, and I asked them to send me a copy so I can put it out on my website. But I don't know if I ever told you this, Paul, but I was in the banking industry for 25 years. So I know it's a heavily regulated industry, and often I'll have people say, well, we can't do it because we have so many rules but of course it can be done because Barclays is doing it all over the world. And they're learning from their customers, and they're really sharing the information. And so I just love that we have this best practice. So Paul, tell our listeners how they can learn more about Barclays and the efforts that you're making. And also, we'll make sure that we put out a link to this video that you're mentioning as well with your interview on my website.
Sure. Okay. So I think certainly from other organizations, I think a lot of our best practices are on our website. So barclayscorporate.com/accessibility. I think for some of your UK-based listeners that would like to know more about accessible customer services we offer to consumers, who predominantly based in the UK, then it would be barclays.co.uk/accessibility. That will be a lot more customer focused on accessible services. Like I say, Twitter at Barclays Access, or emailing myself by all means if this has triggered any ideas. Like I say, we are very open sourcing and keen to learn of any bright ideas or any suggestions. So by all means, reach out to me direct. I'm paul.smyth That's smyth at barclays.com.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on the program today. And thank you for the work that you're doing and the leadership and the thought leadership from Barclays. You prove that we all can be included and that, you prove that we all add value to the workforce too. And it's all about innovation. And so I really, really appreciate the efforts that you're making. So thank you, Paul.
No, well, thanks for the invite and opportunity. And keep up the great work, Deborah. I know on this, the Human Potential podcast, and a ton of other things and other podcasts you do just to help spread the word in the accessibility community. It's great to see there's so many more people sort of chipping in and, really helping spread the word.
Right. I agree. We're doing it together. And I realize, as you said, your name is Paul Smyth, that I've been mispronouncing it forever. I'm sure people must make you Paul Smith all the time. You're Paul Smyth. So thanks for that.
Smyth, easy.
Okay, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for listening to Human Potential at Work. If you're interested in exploring a conversation about my work, I would love for you to visit me on my website at www.ruhglobal.com. That's ruhglobal.com. Or you can follow me on most social media platforms at Deborah Ruh, DebraRuh. I'm available to speak, to provide strategic consulting, and certainly to talk to any brand about the social impact you're having as a brand influencer. Thank you so much for your time and for helping me make a difference in the world.